Hey guys, this is Brass Check, and I'm recording this on Friday, November 21st. And Candace Owen has done a lot of talking about Egyptian planes flying into Wilmington, Delaware, and that's all well and good. But we need to know a little bit more about how the world really works. So I'm doing this sort of rapid fire. Um, First of all, if you're declared a national security threat, the government can and will kill you. I think that was the justification for the assassination of John F. Kennedy, for Martin Luther King, for Robert Kennedy. And somewhere at some very high level, they decided that the Vietnam War was the most important thing in the world, and that Israel is the most important thing in the world. And our desire to control the Middle East using Israel as our thug was the most important thing in the world. And anybody that got in the way of that was a national security threat. And therefore, you were open game to be killed with the cooperation of the U.S. military and the CIA. And in the case of the Kennedys, Zionist gangsters, um, and everybody else that was involved in that. Maybe a few, ex-Batista thugs from who had to escape Cuba for all their crimes. Just a motley crew. But at the very highest level, we know that the green light was given. And why do we know that? Because the killers have been protected nonstop. And of course, that's what's happening with Charlie Kirk. Absolute 100% protection, which means this hit was authorized at the highest levels. Who exactly did it, how they did it, is very interesting. But it's, not really the real ultimate issue. The real ultimate issue is that this was commanded from the highest levels. So let's go into some stuff here. I'm going to just go through my notes. First of all, the relationship between Israel and Egypt is actually quite close. Um, Even the relationship between Israel and Iran quite close. They worked together during the Iran-Contra. They were very happy to work together. There's all kinds of oil dealings going back and forth between Iran and Israel. And by the way, and I never had a chance to really do a show on this, but would you believe that Egypt provides Israel with crude oil every day? Tankers ship out of Alexandria, I believe, with crude oil to be delivered to Israel to be refined in Israel's refineries. That goes on to this day. So there's a lot of very high level cooperation. Also, believe it or not, the Israelis worked with the Iranians to undermine Saddam Hussein in many ways, including the attack on Saddam's reactors. So do not be surprised if uh, believe it, if the Iranians can work hand in glove with the Israelis, uh, you better believe the Egyptians can too. All right, so let's get into some of the details there. First of all, there's joint security and counterterrorism cooperation in the Sinai Peninsula. So they work together, they fight together, they kill together, and they've been doing that very actively and very covertly, especially after 2011. But it's been going on for a long time. So there is a great deal of military cooperation and intelligence cooperation, um, and it just it has accelerated with the passing of time. Um, let's see, what else is in my notes here? They're not formally published. These ties are not formally published or celebrated by either side. Would you be surprised to know that? Would you be surprised to know they remain discreet, given the sensitive nature of domestic and political sensitivities? The cooperation is largely driven by mutual security interests. Those are the covert ones, fighting um, the jihadists and all that. Um, so let's talk a little bit more um, about this. The Israeli military carried out secret anti-terror drone operations in Egypt with the Egyptian government's approval in 2015. So they were killing people in Egypt, the Israelis were, with the cooperation of the Egyptian government. Um, let's see what else we got here. Now, this is done at the level of what they call at the top only. So people working in the trenches, even at fairly high levels, would not even be remotely aware of this stuff happening. Okay. So you could talk to 1,000 Egyptian intelligence officers. They would have no clue this is going on. Same thing on the Israeli side. However, at the top only level, all kinds of things become possible. Um, so I'll just quote from a report from the Carnegie Endowment. While military intelligence cooperation between Israel and Egypt has become increasingly close, these ties don't exist at the people-to-people level. Yeah, that's for sure. Um, this implies a deliberate choice to keep much of the cooperation low profile rather than public. And that's indeed how it's done. Um, for more than a decade, this is the foundation for defense of democracies. For more than a decade, Egypt and Israel maintain robust security coordination that and that cooperation is kept mostly out of the media. Okay. Why are they doing that? Number one, the normal Egyptian is not going to be happy that that their government is working with the murderous Zionist state. Um, Operational security, blah, blah, blah. Diplomatic cover. Ooh. By keeping the cooperation behind the scenes, both states remain flexible. Egypt, on the surface, can disavow itself and distance itself if needed, and Israel can engage without needing a full formalization or public scrutiny. Um, so it's very plausible that Israel and Egypt work together in intelligence operations, and there have been books about this. There is a book by by a woman named Michelle Dunn. Excuse me, it's just an article. It's an article, and it's actually the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace that I referred to earlier. It's called Egypt-Israeli Cooperation at the Top Only. And I'll quote again, Egyptian and Israeli military and intelligence cooperation has long been close. Long. It's not a new development. And that continued and has grown closer since the 2013 military coup. There is another thing written by a guy named Mahed Mandur. It's called Egypt's Evolving Alliance with Israel. Then there is somebody who chose to be anonymous who wrote in the Arab Weekly an article called Israeli Intelligence Cooperation with Egypt at an Unprecedented Level. And a lot of this had to do with ISIS. All right, so again, it's at the top, stuff that's done at the top only. Um, let's now do a little sidebar here and talk about, well, no, actually, let's drill down into this and then we'll go to the next thing. So the fact that it's an Egyptian plane doesn't say anything about who's on the plane. Okay. And the smart way to handle this would be to put Israelis on an Egyptian plane, Israeli operatives, going through Wilmington, where you have what? You have FBI counterintelligence, which is supposed to be managing the nefarious activities or detecting the nefarious activities of foreign agents. Instead, they're assisting them. And because we know the FBI is utterly corrupt from stem to stern, top to bottom, we know that it's plausible that the FBI would run cover for Israelis arriving on Egyptian planes. Okay, that's just so obvious to anybody that knows how these things work. And then we have to remember, and you should really read the book, our JFK and RFK's secret battle against Zionist extremism, that within the CIA, there is a department of, or an office of counterintelligence. That is such a secret department that go to Google and try to find out who is the current head of counterintelligence, and you will not get his name. Okay, but the pattern for how counterintelligence was run out of the CIA was established by James Jesus Angleton, who we used to talk about a lot, but he is perennially relevant. He's mentioned in the book. His work is mentioned in the book. If you're talking about the octopus, a beast with many tentacles, it would be CIA counterintelligence. And there was a very close relationship between Angleton and Herbert Hoover, not Herbert Hoover, the other one. I can't remember the names of all these jerks. Um, J. Edgar Hoover. Um, and I have no doubt that that relationship was maintained since Angleton left. In other words, the counterintelligence head chief of the CIA, whose name you don't know, um, probably does a lot of work with the FBI at the high level, at the top level only, and that would probably include making it easy for Israeli operators to arrive in the U.S. Through a French terminal um, on an Egyptian plane. To me, that's just the most logical, not surprising thing at all, of all, but it may be surprising to the average person, but this is really how the world works. So it's deniability, 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 right? Oh, CIA, we didn't have anything to do with this. FBI, we didn't have anything to do with this. Oh, by the way, we're not going to investigate this because we are implicated in this so severely. Uh, we let these guys in. We've been working with these guys. We've been coordinating with these guys. And now it appears that they were involved in the murder of a very prominent American person. So that's why the FBI is not doing any investigation into this because they're totally involved in this at the highest levels in connection with the counterintelligence of the CIA. And this brings you back full circle to the fact that Charlie Kirk was declared a national security threat. Why? Because he was going to create I don't know, political storms for the Zionist murderous state of Israel. And he was also not really keen on all the murderous behavior going on supported by the United States and the Ukraine. Now, again, both these two enterprises, the Ukraine and the murderous Zionist state of Israel, are part of the American national security state, which is basically, a money generating and laundering operation. Very, very important, just like Vietnam was very, very important. Vietnam was also a massive money laundering um, operation. Corporate friends got to make tons and tons of money. Politicians got to siphon off tons and tons of money. CIA got to run drugs and make tons and tons of money. Um, Criminals. I mean, just criminal state. It's a gangster state, as I've said for decades now. And I guess it's becoming more and more obvious to people, even Candace Owens. So yeah, and I said this way back on the Sabi Sab show, 4 days after um, Kirk was killed. You can have any opinion you want in this country unless you are influential. And if you reach a certain point of influence and you appear to be someone who's going to cause problems for the big operation, they will kill you in the name, and it will all be done in the name of national security through the counterintelligence office of the CIA with the cooperation of the FBI and the State Department at the highest levels only. Um, so that's kind of what happened here. Now we're working on a program. Why I'm doing this while I'm also writing my book, which you should have gotten by now. I hope you have. I'm getting amazing reviews, including major scientists. We just got one from I can't think of her name because I'm not good with names. But she's a senior chief scientist at MIT, and she wrote a glowing review for the book, which you can read. It's called on Amazon. It's called I also have trouble remembering the names of my books. It's called Diabolical Errors. So you'll recognize her name right away. She doesn't identify herself as a tenured chief scientist at MIT, but she in fact is. And she knows a lot. And I was kind of shocked how much she liked my book. Because you don't know. You write a book, is it any good? I don't know. I don't know until people read it. But when somebody of her quality and character and background thinks the book is really good, that's good. So anyway, why I'm doing this reporting instead of working on my book, I don't know. I have to ask myself. But then again, I watch thousands of hours of YouTube videos, and everyone's running around in circles. So if you watched the Sabi Sab show, which came out 4 days after the killing, 2 months ago, I made this basic point. He was killed to shut him up because he was going to upset the apple cart. He had enough influence that it was very worth murdering him. Obviously, the people that worked around him um, have no problem seeing him dead because apparently he was also rocking the boat within the organization. And I referred to that 4 days after the killing. I didn't know what was going on in the background, but it was easy to see what was probably going on in the background. I pointed out that this was a large organization with hundreds of employees. I pointed out that clearly Charlie Kirk wasn't running and didn't know what was going on. I pointed out that there was obvious financial chicanery. This is 2 months ago, guys. Right? I know everybody's sort of figuring this out now. It's a congratulations that we're getting the details. That's really good. But I did bring this up 4 days after the shooting. And the other thing that I brought up was that, again, you have a high profile and you are deemed a risk national security threat. They will kill you without batting an eye. And obviously, how are they going to do it? They can't do it. So this is what James Jesus Angleton did all the time. He would use Israelis to do criminal activity that the CIA itself, lawyers said, nope, don't do that. Let the Israelis do it. And I think that that's what's going to be here. And it's possible too that the Israelis did it also on behalf of the criminals in Ukraine too, right? Hey, that's their job. That's their job. Remember when, we talked about when the Suez Canal was nationalized. Um, uh, France didn't send an army. England didn't send an army. Just a few months later, suddenly the Israelis are attacking Egypt, right? That's what Israel is for, to keep, to destroy Iraq, to use our money to use the money we give them to bribe our criminal politicians to drive us into wars that destroy our young people and our economy. It's like a shot and pool, right? You hit one ball off that one, you hit that one. That's what they are. That's what they are. They're mad dog thugs, mostly working for us. Of course, they have their own little scams running as well. All right. There's another element. This is what we're doing this big video on. It's taking dozens of hours. And again, why I'm doing it when I have this book to write, I don't know, but no one else is doing it. So I've got to do it, which is the Christian angle. All right. So, you know, um, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, okay, they all have something in common. Um, when they all believe, when at their highest level, they all believe in submission to God, right? In fact, Islam says that. Uh, right? But real Judaism, real Christianity, these are good things. I don't know that you have to specifically submit to God. I think you can just be a decent human being, but some people need a middleman. Fair enough. Um, so there's nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing, right? Because what does God want us to do? Don't kill people. Don't hurt children. Do positive things, right? I mean, it's pretty clear, right? I think a 5-year-old can understand these principles, but some people like the middleman. But you also have the criminals that co-opt these religious organizations. Obviously, the Zionists in Israel. Um, Obviously, the small percentage, but very real, unhinged Muslim terrorists. Um, they hijack the religious name. And by the way, a lot of hijacking going on. A lot of hijacking going on. I always laugh when I see Christians wearing, and I'm all for Jesus. I think he's a good guy. I liked his style. Um, uh, so I'm not against Christians in any way, but I have to laugh when I see Christians wearing the cross. The cross was invented by a Roman Empire, has an emperor named Constantine. Um, he had no religious feeling whatsoever. He was a pagan to the bone. But what he saw was this Christian thing was really powerful and they could not defeat it. It's one thing to fight people in battle, you know. It's another thing to fight people that look you in the eye and don't care if they get killed or not. And it's really scary when there's thousands of them. It's very unnerving. And I believe the Roman Empire got unnerved by this Christian movement and decided to co-opt it. Right? So there was no, Christ never drew a cross. The early Christians never walked around with crosses around their neck. That's a Roman thing, guys. That's a Roman thing. In another co-opting, there's a beautiful symbol. It goes thousands of years old. It's in China. It's in India. It's in Native Americans, and it's a sign of the sun. And it's who co-opted that? That would be Hitler. He co-opted the swastika. That symbol is ancient, has been around forever. Another example of a co-opting of a symbol is the Star of David. That's an ancient symbol used by Muslims. You know, it didn't become associated with Jewish people until way late in the game. All right. So, but the Zionists co-opted it. So whenever you see somebody co-opt a symbol, you know they're up to really no good. Um, but anyway, nobody's talking about the Christian mafia, the Christian criminals, with whom Charlie Kirk was in bed. I mean, that's just a fact. Now, I can see why Candace Owens doesn't want to talk about it because it kind of implicates her too. And it kind of makes her friend Charlie look bad. But we're making the video on it. He was up to here with all the Christian televangelist, grifter, scam artists, criminals. They were in bed together. They were working together. Okay. And we need to do a little bit of history. I think most people have heard of the Moonies, the Unification Church, Sun Young Moon. That used to be a big deal in the 70s and 80s. So if you're a little older, you might not know about it. But basically, it was a Christian cult. Um, and it was very well supported by the Korean CIA, the Korean Intelligence Agency. Um, and they were conveniently anti-communist, and they worked hand in glove. So you had the CIA here, you had the Korean Central Intelligence Agency here. They were linked like this, and then on the other side of this chain, you had the Korean Central Intelligence Agency and the Unification Church, and they were linked like this. So basically, um, and that organization was just involved in just rampant fraud and criminality and money laundering, and it's just wildness, you know. Um, but they were useful. They were useful to national security. And so they were cultivated by the Korean Central Intelligence, and the CIA never didn't really work directly. The CIA worked through the Korean intelligence, which worked hand in glove with the Moonies. And what were the Moonies doing? Well, number one, they were strongly anti-communist. Um, and they grew really fast. In Japan and also in the United States. And they built a very powerful lobbying group. Um, uh, so anyway, this idea of Christian this brings you back to Charlie Clark. This idea of bogus organizations, you know, wrapping themselves in the Christian flag as a political arm to do political things for who? For intelligence agencies is not unheard of. And I am absolutely sure that the Kirk's organization completely infiltrated, completely controlled. In fact, we'll show that in the video that we're making. And none of it, it's crazy. You can find all this stuff in little fragmentary pieces all over the internet. None of this is making, I don't have to, you know, none of this is a stretch. And most of this stuff was documented many years before Kirk was killed. All right. So it's not like, oh, let's try to shape reality around conspiracy. No, 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 no. The interacting, the partnered cooperation of intelligence agencies and Christian cults is a very long thing. I just gave you one example of the Moonies, but there's a lot. It goes on in the United States too. But it's done very well and it's done very smoothly. Um, and So I said this was going to be quick, so this is quite quick. Um, but it is coming up. Hopefully we'll have it ready next week. Um, but what I want to do is go back to the beginning of this, which is if, everyone's talking about Egyptian planes and nobody's saying that Egypt and at the highest levels, Egyptian and Israeli intelligence work together. And then they in turn work through CIA counterintelligence, and it's not at all unlikely or inconceivable. Let's put it that way. It's not at all inconceivable that the at the counterintelligence level, Charlie Kirk was declared a national security threat, just the same way John F. Kennedy was, Robert F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King. I think even John Lennon. It's a whole nother story. We every year on soon, it will come up soon on the anniversary of his murder, we go into the fact that the cover story is ridiculous. It's just beyond belief. But, you know, you can commit any crime you want in this country or in this planet if the people whose job it is to um, prosecute you decide not to do it. It's that simple. I mean, it sounds crazy, but if you, I'll tell you right now, if your best buddy is the local DA and he really, really likes you, you can do whatever you want. Because if he doesn't bring charge, cop can arrest you and the DA can go, I don't really see anything here. I'm throwing it out. It's over. So when you have the FBI co-opted as it is thoroughly, and we saw that during the JFK assassination, right? The Robert F. Kennedy assassination, right? And the local police completely useless. Local, all handled. Um, once somebody's declared a national security risk, then murdering them becomes acceptable. And then it's a question of how you're going to do it. Well, the CIA can't do it. So they look to see who's available, and Israel's always available. And hey, you don't really want Israelis flying back and forth. So why not put them on Egyptian planes? They thought they were being very clever. I guess they weren't. I guess they don't realize that people are watching now more than ever before. This is not 1963. Um, so instead of them coming over on Israeli planes, they came on diplomatically protected Egyptian planes through a French-owned uh, air facility in the city where the FBI has a wonderful base for doing all kinds of criminal activity or for coordinating all kinds of criminal activity. So a lot of mysteries get solved. Why was Charlie killed? Because he was a national security risk. Who ordered it? Well, that would have had to have been at the highest levels. That would be counterintelligence. Who did the killing? Probably Israelis. They're good at that kind of thing. Or maybe they brought some really skilled Ukrainian operators. I don't know. There's a whole world of people that can do this kind of thing. They've been, tracking, according to Candace Owens and her reporting, they've been tracking the Kirks for years. These planes. Um, and believe me, they practice this. They plan this very carefully. There might have been other occasions where they wanted to get him, but as she points out, and she's very right about many things. She's a little slow on many things, but she's very right about many things. Is this was deliberately done in broad daylight to send a message. To send a message. You talk against Israel or you talk against Ukraine, and well, they didn't succeed. I don't know what they shot him with. Clearly not a 30-06. But you talk about this, and we'll kill you, and we'll for the public, we'll do it in broad daylight, and we'll walk away from it unscathed. Yeah, that's how it works. It's the same thing with Kennedy, the two Kennedy brothers. Same thing with Martin Luther King. You know, national security risk. And once that's declared, then all things become possible. And there's a world of people, including especially our Israeli friends, who are ready to pitch in and kill anybody that's a risk to them. Uh, it's clear. Like, there's so much to cover that never gets covered. Do you know there's a 50? I think it's 50,000. I don't know. some ridiculously large installation that's being built in uh, Lebanon. And it's like the biggest, they're calling it a U.S. embassy, but it's so outsized. I mean, it's like 100 times the size, literally, the size of what it needs to be given the actual diplomatic work necessary between the U.S. and Lebanon. Well, clearly, the long-term goal here is complete control. We've got a similar sized embassy in Iraq. This is a part of we're not going to leave that oil to chance. That's not going to happen. That's why Israel is protected, disgusting and revolting as they are, um, because it's our plan, and we need them. We need them to carry this nefarious thing out. Uh, so threaten Israel, you're threatening America. Threaten the Ukraine, you're threatening America. Therefore, you're a national security risk. Therefore, we'll have an Egyptian plane full of possibly Israeli hitmen showing up and blowing your head off or attempting to blow your head off in broad daylight. Um, Very interesting. Still thinking about what weapon they used and from what angle. I thought I knew, but I don't know now. I don't know now. But we know they got him. There's no doubt about that. And we now know that Egyptian military people were tailing his every move, so-called Egyptian military people. But wait do you see this film on the involvement of the Christian mafia and the Kirk organization. It's kind of frightening. And it's really weird because CNN and MSNBC are never going to tell you about it. Fox is never going to tell you about it. But bizarrely, even all the great, investigative journalists, they're not going to tell you about it either, which I find really strange. Maybe because it's just too important information to actually be allowed to let out. So anyway, this got a lot longer than I expected. I hope you found it useful. If it seems a little disjointed, it's because I'm trying to get back to my book. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Brass Check TV, free to you, not free to us. We've got a server bill, we've got an email software bill, we've got a tech helper bill, and that happens every month. So to everybody that is supporting us financially, that's paying for their subscription in one way or another, we really appreciate it. If you're not, consider doing so. Everybody's got money for the newspaper and the cable bill and all that. Do you have money for media that's actually serving you? That's really the issue here. And when you help us, it allows us to get this information out to the world. So thanks to all our supporters, and if you're not a supporter already, please consider becoming one.